we want to seek the truth, if that's our intention, if that's something that we want to pursue in this life, and ultimately all of us do in some way, shape, or form, because I believe that's simply in the base coding of the whole human experience and one of the reasons we're here in the first place, even though we might be indirectly or unconsciously pursuing such a thing. No matter what, every experience that we go through life is orienting us toward what is real and true, realigning us to what we came from, the original code, the underlying creative spark that instigated this lifetime in the first place. And then there are others like myself and people of a particular mindset that have a natural bent or inclination toward seeking what is authentic, real, and true by default. And so we tend to dive into things when others around us might be questioning our motives and what we're doing, and that we're going to get lost or fall into the grips of some sort of a cult or religion or some other thing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that for a short time, as long as we remain, steadfast in our pursuit of what is real and true. Because if you're truly going after what is real, if your intent is to actually discern what is true about life in general, if you want to go after the big ideas, if you want to discern the true principles of something, it requires necessarily that you stick your nose in the business of those who have strong beliefs or paradigms and ideas, put on their jacket for a while, and walk around, see what it feels like, get some ideas and gems and wisdom from that particular line of thought, but then move on. Because if you're adamant and set on pursuing what is true and real and authentic about life, but those fundamental principle ideas, you cannot adhere to any specific belief or paradigm, religion, what have you, for very long, because you'll simply close your perception. You'll narrow it down to too specific a field of thought, a mode of thought, a way of believing, which will affect your acting and thinking and everything else. And your reality will, of course, reflect that particular belief system. So that all relates to your intentions and what it is you really, truly desire and want out of any particular situation, and perhaps in the bigger picture, out of your life and why you're here in the first place. I was born into, I guess, what you would consider a Catholic sort of family, baptized and all the rest. But fortunately, the folks weren't very religious. It was only once or twice a year that we might go into any church-related event, or it was usually weddings and funerals, really, that the only time that we did anything formal. And we did for a very short time go to catechism and those kind of classes, which was hilarious. Because by then, my sister and I were, I think, into our teens. So it didn't make any sense, because everyone around us in these classrooms and such were years into this particular mode of thinking. They knew their Bible and things, and it was ridiculous, because, fish out of water type situation. So there was nothing to be gained there. Credit to the old man for trying to give us a little spiritual foundation in that regard, but it was futile from the onset. Nevertheless, for those brief moments, a brief glimpse into what to me was quite ridiculous on the face of it. Just the storytelling, and nothing really held any water. Nothing really held any sort of foundational truth to it. And again, coming into it years after the fact probably had a lot to do with that. Because you've lived in a certain way, you've lived in a certain paradigm already for 10, 12, 15 years. How are you going to suddenly jump into the other side, into a certain belief system, unless you're desperate and seeking and needing, and you have a void within you that allows you to, number one, suspend your disbelief and to really just adopt these ideas without any real scrutiny or interrogation. That's not going to happen unless you're far more innocent and ignorant and young and impressionable. And this is, of course, how these ideas get installed and perpetuated throughout societies and cultures throughout the world. And the power players and the manipulators that be know very well that you got to get them young. Even if they don't stick with it throughout life, you impress these powerful, perhaps divisive and conflicting and contrasting kind of ideas as young as possible and hammered home aggressively, violently, emotionally. So even if they don't stick with the particular religious sort of aspirations and conditions, there's some fundamental seeds that were planted that will guide them in certain psychological and emotional ways throughout their life until such time that they become aware of and uproot these false notions, false narratives, and spiritually divisive, disparate and dissociative ideas. And many people will never challenge these things, and they'll wonder why they're struggling or constantly at odds with something, or constantly on, one side or the other side, picking teams and easily leaning into the ideas that there's right and wrong, good and bad, left or right, red or blue, whatever the hell it might be. You're conditioned right from the get-go to pick teams, to pick a side, to belong somewhere, because there's no middle ground. There's got to be one or the other. And that's just a distortion of reality. But it serves those who like to manipulate society. It serves those who like to take advantage of the human animal and take advantage of that unconsciousness for as long as possible. When it comes to seeking the truth, we have to be able to let all these things go. We have to be able to, again, put on these clothes to try them out for a time, but also be able to, at any moment, discard them and move along, carry on down the road. What's next? I got a couple of ideas there, found some things, some little gems, some ideas that I've tested out and lived, but the truth was not there. The real and the true was being cloaked, and it couldn't necessarily be discerned, and so we tried it and we're moving on. And this goes far beyond simply spiritual and religious ideas, of course. In the modern era, you have the idea of scientism in modern science and established narratives that are constantly being used to abuse and manipulate and mind control and socially engineer society at large. But the principles have a religious sort of notion about them, right? The principles of modern science are very dogmatic and religiously and superstitiously infused, especially, I've talked many times about cartel medicine and the ideas of germ theory and all these other notions based on completely debunked, falsified, nonsensical, childish, scientific, materialistic ideas are still perpetuated and still believed and adhered to by billions, even though they know if they really sat with it and questioned it, it wouldn't feel right, it wouldn't resonate. Something about it would be off, and yet they choose to go along to get along. They choose to allow the cult of the white coats to inject all sorts of strange and bizarre chemicals into them in hopes of safety and protection and immunity and all the rest of it. And that's nothing more than superstition, because there's no science to back it up whatsoever. Honest, true, real science. So as we go through life, as we're seeking what is real and true, we have to be willing to really scrutinize and interrogate those ideas that we hold most cherished and valued, foundational and central to our core belief systems. Because we know that most of the things that we've been fed in this lifetime, that they are twisted, distorted, inverted, and not representing what is real and true. They're coated and painted in certain colors. They're maligned and biased in certain cognitively maligned and fallacious ways. They're used and abused to manipulate us, to guide the herd in certain ways. And while the vast majority will never wake up from that slumber and that trance-like mindset, those of us who do will have to go through a certain rigor and testing and challenging and scrutinizing of things that we've taken on and believed, and be willing to set them aside, if not completely delete them. Take what we can that's useful and truthful about it, and throw away the rest, and keep on keeping on, keep walking, and look into some other directions, some other paradigms, some other belief systems. Or stop looking altogether, stop seeking altogether, and realign with the truth that is always and forever from within, summoned only from within, because that's the only place where truth ever really comes from, is from within, the primary source, the original spark. And that's the most dangerous thing to the controllers and the parasites and the predators of this realm. Anyone who truly realigns from within and starts to live the story from inside out is no longer controlled, is no longer part of the machine, is no longer something they can feed off and manipulate. And for those of us on the truth-seeking side of the reality spectrum, that's the most empowering way to live. It's not the easiest or simplest way to live. It is quite simple, but it is certainly difficult in this particular time, in this era that we've chosen to come into. But at the same time, as I've said many times, we knew full well what we were getting into, and we jumped in headfirst, right into the deep end, willingly knowing what's to come and what this place will offer us, and how we will be able to explore what we will be able to explore, and what elements of truth we're going to be able to tango with as we go, and how things will be slightly off, slightly distorted, and we'll adhere to and adopt certain ideas. We'll join certain clubs and associations and organizations. We'll think we're going to be that dissident voice when we sign up for that certain membership, and we think that, these people think like us and we're safe in that particular environment. And we may for a time indeed be that way, but we will also find a tipping point, where we'll have to go beyond, and where that will also be a captured operation. It will also be co-opted by the machine, by the system, to serve some other needs, and on and on and on. And this will just keep happening throughout life. That's how it unveils. That is how it unravels. That is the process of being the apocalyptic agent, as I've spoken about and written about. And that's the process of the unraveling and revealing that we have to go through if it is our intention to know the truth, the real principles, the underlying energy that maintains and allows us to proceed in amplifying the light, as it were. And I suppose it is a matter of courage, if you're going to go to any sort of religious organization, whether it's just out of curiosity or because you get involved with someone that may be of that particular faith, you're going to have to be serious and honest about what you're going to do there and how you're going to approach that, and how and what you're going to accommodate and perhaps even compromise about yourself and your beliefs and your ideas. And if you're going to adopt those types of ideological or religious or paradigmatic sort of ideas, you have to know, probably going in, you're deciding and choosing to limit your potentials in certain ways in order to be part of some sort of contract or agreement or relationship. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. However, what we certainly know is that we can't lie to ourselves. It's impossible, because some part of us always knows. Some part of us is always aware, ever aware. We are, sovereign creator beings, a fractal of the all. We can't lie to ourselves. We can pretend to. We can try and set aside certain things, and we can try and shelve an idea and a process and something that we've become aware of. We can try to be blissfully unaware and oblivious, plug back into the matrix, as it were. But it won't work. Not if it is something foundational about you that wants truth, desires truth, has to know and live in a truthful way. Because it's disingenuous, it's inauthentic, right? And this can be things in small or large, in the littlest white lie or the grandest complete fake facade, mask personality and identity that we present to the world, and everything in between. But especially, and as I was mentioning, if you're going into something for the purposes of, love and marriage, that's very dangerous territory. Because right off the bat, you're going in deceptively, inauthentically, disingenuously. Right off the bat, you are setting aside certain elements of your own life's journey and process for the sake of another. And that's a big decision. And power to you if you can do it, honestly. Power to you if it doesn't hurt you psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, energetically, and eventually physically. You can't lie to yourself. So go through it all. Try on all sorts of different clothes and ideas, identities and ideologies, and religious beliefs and practices, spiritual beliefs and practices, scientific beliefs and practices, anything and everything across the spectrum of human experimentation, exploration, and experience. You'll get ideas and information and data and feedback from everything and everyone. Every situation you put yourself in will help you hone in and discern better what's real and true. Discern better what you authentically want and desire and need and wish to explore in this particular life. It's only through walking. Solvitur ambulando. It is solved by walking. It's solved by moving. We can try and think ourselves in and out of situations, but it doesn't fix anything. Thinking doesn't fix or do anything. It can help us ideate and imagine certain ideas, but until we move the avatar and engage in that particular direction, start moving in the direction of what it is we want, it's only going to be a torturous kind of routine that solves and serves nothing except the machine that puts ideas into our minds that, affirmations and thinking is going to solve your problems, or putting your trust into somebody or someone else or some entity or some organization that's going to solve it for you, some savior that's going to come along and fix your problems and rewire your psychology for you, which simply will never, ever happen. And that's why we want to engage in many different ways of believing and thinking and experiencing life, especially in our younger years, when we're still formulating ideas before a lot of things get hardwired, even though arguably by the age of 12, it's pretty much set in stone, and what's already kind of set there gets affirmed and reaffirmed and concretized by our, mid-20s, probably. So it gets increasingly and exponentially more difficult to do anything about it after the fact. Even if you think psychologically you might be doing things, it'll likely require something more dramatic, more extreme, more forced or coerced, or some sort of tragic, traumatic, whatever event that will have to completely derail you from a certain pattern and routine and behavior in order for you to realign with something that is more true and simple and real and authentic and true for you. So that's why we want, there's a certain philosophical process and approach there. You try everything in the buffet, and you'll learn very quickly that to be satisfied and satiated, you don't need really anything from there at all. Or you'll be more than satisfied with a couple of key ingredients that allow you to proceed and pursue the most important things in your life, which will always be authenticity, being genuine with yourself, with others, with those you care about and love, being courageous and authentic in your productivity, in your process, in your expressions, and in your gifts and offerings to the world. That only comes through a whole encyclopedia of different experiences, situations, and circumstances that help to inform and tone your muscles of discernment. So don't get stuck in any particular avenue for too long. And we all do it. We all will do it, especially getting into our adult years and 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Onward and onward, we can get stuck in these ruts that are virtually impossible to break out of. It's not impossible, but very, very difficult. So keep yourself in a malleable sort of mindset. Even when you think you get to a point of, I know absolute truth now, I've experienced what is real and true, and I don't need to question and seek and search anymore. And that is certainly the ideal, isn't it? It'd certainly be great to get to a point where you don't need to seek, which is the ultimate goal, of course, right? The moment you can stop seeking and be satisfied and sit in the truth and sit in that heart space and know and embody that original substance, the original truth, the untainted and clean and clear flow, then you've solved the ultimate equation, haven't you? That is the ultimate goal, but most of us will never get there. Or we'll have brief moments and little flickers, or we'll try and cheat and hack our way. We'll try some plant medicine or some other protocols, or use technology. There's an app for that. Maybe there's an AI for that, which, those are all bullshit. There's no cheat, there's no hack to being truthful and authentic and finding what is ultimately real about you. What's the point if you're going to be a coward and seek shortcuts and quick ways out because life's been overbearing or difficult, or people have been overbearing or difficult, or your family life, or your political situation in your country, or there's 1,000,000,001 different reasons to shut down, to run away, and to consider ending ourselves and our story prematurely. You won't get judged either way, but if you want to maximize and thoroughly sample what this life can offer, you need to rise above all that clamor and clatter. You need to take back that agency, autonomy, authority, authorship. You need to stand in the knowing of who and what you really are. And that, for most of us, will come only through a whole array, kaleidoscope, encyclopedia of different experiences from different avenues of life, different relationships, different belief systems and paradigms, experimenting with all of these things and ultimately shedding and removing and minimalizing and simplifying, because the truth will emerge on its own. It doesn't need to be defended or explained. Truth is self-evident once you get past all the stories and the narratives and the ideas handed down, inculcated and introduced and imposed upon you in a life. The truth is clear, clean, perfect, simple. And each one of us will find it in a different way and experience it in a different way. Unique to ourselves, as unique as our own fingerprints, as unique as our own, coding in this life. However you want to label it, DNA or otherwise, as unique as our energetic imprint. So go forth, experiment, experience, explore, and don't get stuck in any one way of thinking, one group, one society, one organization, one religion for too long. It cannot provide all you need. And that is my opinion. Don't believe anything I say. Try for yourself. Discern for yourself what's real and true. Just sharing ideas as usual to try and outline the principles of things, the greater underlying principles of life, and how to get the most out of this short lifetime that we have. Take of it anything that's useful, discard the rest, as I've been saying throughout this whole chat. Have a good one.
It's been coming down every other day, but they tell me we are in drought season. That's not my story, not my reality. No matter what you force my eyes to see, and the sky is falling right on top of me, but they tell